Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are going to be jumping into a lore video about one of my favorite characters, Lord Soth. This is going to be a good one. I think Lord Soth is amazing. He is one of the few Death Knights of D&D, and he is the Death Knight. It's a great story. I'm all about it. Definitely one of my favorite characters. But before we jump into that, a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. And a big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures. We're fortunate enough to be part of a live stream game with them. Definitely check us out Wednesday nights. The links to both of those is in the description. With that out of the way, let's talk about the Death Knight Lord Soth. Alright guys, this is going to be a long one, so definitely get ready for a big discussion. Alright, Lord Soth comes to us from Dragonlance. Dragonlance is that extremely kind of like dynamic, dramatic, super overpowered world of Dungeons and Dragons. This is where you're fighting gods and dragons, and it's insane. That being said, Lord Soth is an imposing figure. He is awesome. I absolutely love this character. He is a very scary character, and is just so awesome. So we're going to jump right into it and tell you about Lord Loren Soth of Dargon Keep. And we're going to start kind of in the beginning. So, before Lord Soth became a Death Knight, he was a Knight of Solamnia. Solamnia, well, is the land, basically, in Dragonlance. Now, being a Knight of Solamnia was something of a great honor. You had to be good. You worship good deities. You were honorable. You protect the weak and the sick, and you gave shelter, and you fought against oppression. You fought against enemies. You brought people to safe places. You transported them. You protected people. You were heroic in that general good kind of cookie cutter kind of way that normally would drive me mad. But Lord Soth had dedicated his life to this, and he reached the highest rank of the Knights of Solamnia. He was a Knight of the Rose. Now, if you play Dragonlance, they do have different backgrounds and feats in regards to that, so you can kind of take some of that understanding and pull that together. But it is prevalent. It is something of great stature. So when he was made into a Knight of the Rose, he inherited land to take care of and to kind of govern over. And so he inherited Dargon Keep, which was a castle in the middle of Nightland. Nightland is a place inside of the area. He was then married to his wife, Corinne. And this worked out really well. Everything was going great for Soth. His life at this point was pretty awesome. But he was called into this town of Palanthas to attend the annual meeting of knights. This is something where all the knights got together. They assessed the problems of the situation and of the circumstances in the world, and they kind of just took care of things, and they did whatever changes were necessary, governed changes, move soldiers around, attack bandits, and things like that. So, in the duration of time that Lord Soth was becoming a Knight of the Rose, he had to achieve certain tasks. And throughout these tasks, he had to vanquish evil. So he killed monsters, he killed ogres, he killed a lot of these things that were terrorizing the land, and it drew him to this world of adventure. And it's really what brought him joy was slaying these beasts and being called a hero. It kind of fit into his character and developed into this fundamental thing that drew his entire life. And throughout him accomplishing this goals is where he met Corinne, and then he ended up falling in love and was super happy about it. But by the time that he had earned Dargon Keep and his position of Knight of the Rose, he stopped fighting on the front lines as much as he was commanding from the back. And this left Soth feeling like a big part of his life was missing. and that this huge portion of his life was just gone, and he kind of had this itch for it. Like, it never left him, this desire to be on the front lines, actually taking sword to flesh to rid the world of the evils that was attacking it. So it was at this time that he was sent to Palanthros to attend the annual meeting of the knights. And as Soth and his knights were going to Palanthros, they saw a party of elves on the road, and they were being attacked by a band of ogres. So the knights went in, charged Lord Soth. To him, this was a moment to rekindle that part of his life that he had lost. So he slew these ogres, and heroically, in such, like, it was like poetry in motion to watch Soth fight. He was a renowned fighter. He was immensely strong. He had this great presence to him. And as he slew these ogres with the help of his men, he spoke to the elves in order to make sure they were okay and to offer them safe passage. But one of the people that was being offered was an elven princess to be named Isolde. Now, she was wounded, so as opposed to going back to Palanthros, Soth took her back to Dargard Keep under the pretexts of just getting her, healed and taken care of. And naturally, he started having an affair with her. This is kind of where everything starts to go wildly wrong. So, Soth never makes it to Palanthros. Soth goes back, takes care of Isolde, falls in love with Isolde, obviously, and Isolde falls in love with him. Soth starts to have an affair. His wife then starts to become jealous and starts to fear losing Soth. So she gets in contact with a priestess to help get her to become pregnant. And in that circumstance, she does get pregnant, and Lord Soth had not really been as intimate with her as normally he would be. But as time had gone by and the child was born disfigured. And the reason why the child was born disfigured was because the child was born out of the emotional state of Lord Soth. Because it was conceived through magical means and Lord Soth was to be the father, it took the essence of who he was at that time, and he was betraying her. He was unfaithful, and he was betraying the standard of the knights that he belonged to. So the child came out deformed. And Soth believed that his original wife, Corinne, had cheated on him, and as a result, what was to be his son was this monster that was not his. So Sloth then kills them both and tries to hide it. This is a horrible circumstance. This is like the beginning of the very, very end of the good knight. Well, this is really the end of the good Lord Loren Soth. Now, soon after she died, and he had covered it up, he marries Isolde. And 1 year later, she gives birth to a son, and he names her Peredu. He names him Peredu, after one of his parents. A month after the son is born, Soth is summoned to Palanthros. When he arrives, he doesn't really know his meaning as to why he's arrived, but he is sentenced to death for the murder of his wife. And Soth is being prepared to be hanged publicly. To be beheaded publicly by a group of his loyal knights. But the knights who had been charged with beheading Soth were his knights. And it was supposed to be up to their honor to uphold that code, so it was supposed to be them that did it. And instead, they rescued Soth and they ran him back to Dargon Keep. And this was very, very interesting because now Soth was in his fortress. And the knights couldn't siege the keep because it would hurt the people in the area. So he was kind of just banished into just remaining into that area. And if he was ever to leave, he would face the retribution. Because if the knights attacked the city, the knights would cause harm to the people there. So while Soth was basically a prisoner in his own home, Isolde prayed to the gods for a way to save her husband. And the goddess Mishakal charged Isolde with warning Soth of the coming cataclysm, and set Soth on a quest to Istar, which is a place, kind of like a kingdom, to stop the king priest from calling down the wrath of the gods in his folly. Now, kind of a lot of words. King priest is this priest or cleric named Belandris Pilofirio, Belladinus Pilofiro, I hope that's how it is, and he was a legendary healer at the time. He had grown in power and was renowned and got given the position of king priest of Istar. Now, the cataclysm is a huge event. We will cover this later, but ultimately, the cataclysm destroys countries. It reshapes the earth in this world, and it causes like you can't really understand the amount of deaths that were caused by this cataclysm. So huge, dynamic, game-changing event, the cataclysm. We'll get into it. It's going to be its own video because it is really in depth and there's a lot of key players involved in it. Just know that after this happens, the gods stop answering people, period. Now, gods have clerics, they have warlocks, people pray to them. Basically, if you don't, whatever god deity you worship in D&D, as long as you act in accordance with their tenets, when you die, you go to their realm. That's how you spend your afterlife. Unless you're an elf, depending on whether or not you're a drow or not, or a Shadar Kai or not. You either go to Corellian, or you go to Loth, or you go to the Raven Queen, and that's kind of it. There's like no ifs, ands, or buts. But everyone else, depending on what deity you served, you would go to that deity's realm. If you were evil, you went to the evil realms. If you were neutral, you went to the neutral realms. If you were good, you went to the good realms. It all kind of fit into that. And understand that these gods, in order to maintain their own divinity and strength and their power, came from the divine energies, came from the worship of the mortal people. After the cataclysm, 300 years, all the deities were silent. That means there was no magic coming through any clerics, no warlocks, nothing changing the actual world. And deities were tangibly in the world, changing things and mitigating things, and it all went silent because of the cataclysm for 300 years. Bad time. Real bad time all around. But again, we're going to talk about that in a separate video, but it's important to know the gravity of this circumstance. So here we are. Loth is basically trapped into his home. His wife now, Isolde, praying to the gods for help to save her husband. And the goddess actually warns them of the coming cataclysm, and tells Isolde to tell Soth that if he fights and stops the cataclysm, they will save her husband. The problem is, it is also foretold that he is going to die in the cataclysm. He will die factually, but the gods would bring him back. But he will absolutely face his death, and that if he doesn't, an untold amount of people will die because of the cataclysm. So Soth takes this moment and considers this his path to redemption. He considers this, if I can do this, if I can save the known universe, then I can be free. I can reinstate my life. I can still be a knight of the Rose and still be the true leader and ruler of Dargard Keep and have my wife, and things will go well. So he agreed to undertake the quest and began his journey with his loyal knights on to stop the cataclysm. Now, on the road, Lord Soth encounters the same elves who had been traveling with Isolde the first time they met. And the maidens who had been Isolde's companions told Soth that she had been unfaithful to him, that the child that she was bearing was not his, and that he had been sent on a fool's quest just to die so that way she and her lover can take Dargard Keep. So now Lord Soth is in this circumstance where he's talking to the maidens that had been close to Isolde initially and had been transporting her when they first met, and they tell him that she's unfaithful. He's on a fool's errand, that he's going to go out there and he's going to die, and Isolde is going to keep Dargard Keep and rule. Now, this doesn't sit well, obviously. And Soth gets infuriated. So he kills all the elven women that were traveling with him, and rides back to Dargard Keep with hatred and murder in his heart. Soth confronts his wife, and at this time she had given birth, obviously, to her son. And while he's fighting her and arguing with her in this heated combat, he's not fighting her. The cataclysm happens. And as the world is quaking as it's occurring, as like the equivalent of mountains being dropped on the earth is happening around them, a chandelier falls from the ceiling and is crushing Isolde and trapping their son. And as she starts to die from just being bled out from the chandelier falling on him, she begs Lord Soth to save their son. But then Soth refused, believing that son to not be his, and watches and is content to just watch his son and his wife die. And with the last breath Isolde has, she curses Soth. And in this curse, he says he would live in torment 1 year for every death caused in the cataclysm, the event that he could have stopped. So as this happens, all of Dargard Keep is engulfed in flames. The whole keep burns. The stones burn. Soth stands there and watches his wife and his child burn. His armor burns so hot it burns everything underneath him, and his body is kind of suffused to this armor that's just now blackened and ash and soot. The gods heeded Isolde's final word and kept her curse, and instilled it in Soth. So Soth awakes as a knight, trapped in the armor that was once been his protection. When he comes to and he moves, every part of his body aches and burns, and he's in constant pain the entire time. Eventually, the flesh and the muscle all burns and rots away inside and kind of just falls through. And he's left just a skeleton and armor that's been charred. And this is the punishment that Lord Soth is forced to endure. But Lord Soth didn't die alone. The elf maidens that had tricked Sloth were also cursed. And they are now banshees that are housed in Dargard Keep. His loyal knights that followed him through thick and thin and never left his side, all 13 are skeletal knights that are forever at the whim of Lord Soth. Alright, so we're going to cut the video off right there because this is a long story and we don't want to make this video entirely too long. So definitely next week, part 2 and the final of Lord Soth and his epic journey. If you've liked the video, if you like Lord Soth, if you like what you've seen, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Without you, a lot of this wouldn't be possible. And a big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failure, who we've been part of a live stream game Wednesday nights, and we are very grateful to be part of it. We love playing with those guys. And thank you for giving a Spooky Kid a chance.